But for me, more than anything, it's just trying to make a wine that's healthy, and so you pick the grapes at a time that will facilitate you not having to make a bunch of additions. So if you pick when there's natural acidity, then you don't have to acidulate. And if you pick it, at relatively, at a reasonable level of bricks and ripeness, then you don't have to add any water and water it back. I mean, like this wine, I would have liked for it to gotten a little bit riper, but as I was watching it, it was just sitting there. The vines were starting to shut down. It's not getting any riper, and the pH is starting to go up. So then you pick. Can't wait any longer. Could have waited longer until the grapes started becoming raisins and everything. Then you would have had richer flavors, but you would have had no acidity. And there's a definite point when the vines are growing, the grapes are maturing, where you go from a point where, and it happens very quickly, where the grapes go from something that's alive to something that's starting to decay. And I think that's where you always want to try to pick, is at that cusp, where you can bring the fruit in, the fruit can become wine on its own without a lot of, manipulation, additions, whatever. And I think there's a definite point at which that really is noticeable and happens.
You've sort of been pegged as a natural winemaker. I mean, do you feel pretty dogmatic about certain practices within that, native yeast or no SO2?
For me, the biggest thing is when you pick the grapes, and so you want to have natural balance in the grapes with sugar levels and acidity. So when come harvest time, I do a lot of sampling. I like to sample a place and then sample it the next day to confirm it. Then sample it a few days later, and when you're ready to pick, you sample it, and then you sample it the next day. And so I probably sample more, maybe more than I should, but I think that'll be the big deal, is like when it comes time to work with that vineyard, go out and you sample it, you look at the grapes, and you monitor those types of things. You monitor the ripeness, you monitor the acidity, and you do your best to pick it at the right day. And then you taste the wines and going into the future, but if something happens, something attacks one of these wines, then I'm gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think then it's being honest about it, not covering it up. It's like saying well, I'm a natural winemaker. Well, and then one year, something crazy happens and I have to, use some of the winemaking tools that are out there to salvage one of my wines. Well, then, instantly you're like a hypocrite, or, I think that's crazy, That was one of the stipulations when I came to work out here. The owner said that I had to, farm it organically. I couldn't put anything on it. So I think that's what's cool about this place is there's, the fruit trees here. You see all the plum trees. There's the guy down the way, growing vegetables and stuff. That's Randy, the owner down there. It's edible.
So someone's over there. I was going to put the fruit in the fridge.
Yeah, somebody's over there. They got there yesterday. Through the weekend. So that's why I turned the pump on, just to run it while I was here. So are you?
You have water on?
No. We're gonna be here for another. It's just sand. So the water just goes straight through it. It doesn't, doesn't retain any moisture. So I put probably 200 sticks in the ground. And you can see here's one that's starting to grow. So this was literally just a cutting that was put in the ground. I tried to cut as long of cuttings as I could and to put them as deep in the ground as I could. Some of them are like 2 feet in the ground. You can see that one starting to grow there. And I think that if you're really trying to make a wine that represents a place and a year and all that kind of stuff, then you don't, the less inputs that you put in anytime you do something like irrigation, then you're introducing a factor that's not natural. It's not a true representation of that year. Economics are important. I want to have some young wines, some wines that can be available young, some wines that sit around in barrel a little bit longer, and to have wines at different price points. You know, these wines, like this Cab Franc, I'm going to sell it for $30 a bottle. I think that's a reasonable, fair price for that wine, considering that it's made, you know, it's a truly small lot, handmade wine. I think that's a reasonable price. But even at $30, you know, what someone's expecting, they're not expecting a big, rich, ripe, like oaky wine. It's definitely a misconception that Happy Canyon is the only place to ripen these types of varieties. I mean, think about Happy Canyon. You know, when was the last time you had a really great Syrah from there? It's too hot.
Yeah.
By the time it starts getting really ripe and decent, you know, flavors and everything, you've lost acidity. And so this wine had no additions whatsoever during the entire upbringing. So, you know, crushed the grapes, let them ferment, sat without any sulfur for, you know, 8 months or so. Was racked right before bottling, bottled without any sulfur. Filtered through pantyhose. I love this whole winemaking deal and everything, but I like doing other stuff too. And so I would love for this business to be, you know, to have one employee, for me to be around, you know, doing winemaking and stuff, but like a lot of the menial day-to-day tasks, to have somebody else to help me do that. Who knows how long it will last, you know? You start projects and some of them last and some of them don't. I'd love to go down to Argentina and try to do something cool down there. You know, whether it just be like 1 or 2 producers or something that you befriend and import a little bit of wine, enough to kind of subsidize being able to go down to Argentina once a year. So if I could go down in January or February each year and go hang out in Argentina for a few weeks, I would love it. I've never even been, but I know that I would like to do that.